I'm here today with Heather Wolf, who is an RD, which is a registered dietitian.
Yep.
So I hear you've been an RD for about 20 years now, is that right?
That's correct. I've been a dietitian since 1999.
Awesome.
I actually did I got my bachelor's of food science and nutrition in New York, at a school in New York, but then
Ooh.
came out to Arizona to do my post-grad internship and
Okay.
loved it so much I stayed. So I've been out here since actually 98.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
I actually grew up in New York and moved out here and
Yeah.
also have stayed.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, I love it out here.
Okay. So what does somebody need to do in order to become an RD? What are the qualifications you need?
You have to get your bachelor's in food science and nutrition, and
Okay.
if you stop there, you can be a nutritionist. But if you want to be an actual registered dietitian, which is obviously much more acceptable in the medical community as a medical profession, you do have to apply to internships, and it's very competitive. You definitely have to have good grades. You have to do all the volunteering. You really have to show the effort. Because when I went to school a long time ago, only about 4 out of 10 people got placed in an internship because there just weren't as many, and it was competitive. So it was really important that you really kind of checked all the boxes and speaking with the counselor at school to get able to apply. So then you apply for the internships, and if you get accepted, you get to go. But if you don't get accepted, you have to wait. At least back then, you had to wait another year to reapply. So if you really want to go through to be an RD, you've got to really make sure you've got good grades, do all the good volunteering things, go through the internship, and once you're done that, you have to study to pass the national board exam, which is pretty difficult. I mean, it was not an easy exam. I mean, I studied for about 6 months for this exam. But once you pass it, you become a licensed registered dietitian. And then at that point, you do have to do 75 continuing education units every 5 years to keep your license, because if you don't, you have to take the test again.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Okay.
something you don't want to have to do.
Okay. So now, do you have to be licensed also in the state of Arizona? to
Arizona,
practice, or
you
no?
don't. Some
You
states
don't.
you do. You don't
Okay.
have to be in Arizona. That's correct.
Okay, but in some states they would
Mhm.
have to do that.
Yep.
Okay, so now you've mentioned being a nutritionist versus an RD.
Mhm.
So what are some of the job possibilities? Maybe if you don't mind covering both, like so
Sure.
where might you work?
You know, as a nutritionist, you could be an assistant to an RD, for example, without actually having gone through getting credentialed. So as a nutritionist, I mean, you know, a lot of people can call themselves a nutritionist because they've maybe taken some nutrition classes,
Okay.
and that's great. And it can definitely help people with diet planning, counting calories, but they're not going to have technically the same education, the more metabolic stuff that we're going to learn, like in biochemistry and organic chemistry, lab 1 and 2. So if you're not going through all the way, you definitely aren't going to have the same opportunities for work. You're not going to be able to be, a dietitian in a hospital, a VA hospital. Definitely insurances aren't going to reimburse a nutritionist. You definitely have to be credentialed if you want to be that upper echelon, even respected in the field, because I get asked the difference all the time. So, if you stop after the 4-year degree, you're going to have some good education, but you're not going to be able to have nearly the same opportunities as you would as an RD.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So then, do you think it's worth it then to go on?
Yeah,
to
I
that?
do.
Okay.
Now, if you are saying wanting to focus multidisciplinary, where you wanted to be an exercise physiologist, it would be fine to stop with that. Do you know what I mean? If you don't, you know what I mean? You would have the background, so you could teach exercise and nutrition for sure. But if the main focus is to be just nutrition and want to be able to have a lot of opportunities, you have to go through with it. It's not an easy degree, and the way I look at it, if you're going to go through those 4 years, go for that last year and just keep going, because it's a lot of science, a lot of math and science, so it's not an easy degree. But if you're interested,
Okay.
it's great. It really is. The job opportunities as an RD can vary from medical settings like hospitals. A lot of doctors' offices now are hiring dietitians to come in. Like, I've worked in cardiology practices where I work with all the patients. So then I also have a private practice. I do lecturing. I do a lot of corporate wellness. I do lunch and learns. There's a lot of opportunity to be an RD today.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So you're on your own then. You have your
Yes.
own business.
Yep, I've always been what you might want to call a 1099. My business is called HMD Nutrition. I do a lot of contract work. In the next 2 days, I'm actually going to corporate accounts and doing 10-minute counseling sessions for like 5 hours for health and wellness programs. So I do my own counseling. I can go out and do lectures. I've actually developed and taught a nutrition course before at a college.
Oh.
So the opportunities are really various as an RD. So you don't have to be
Wow.
just stuck, say, working in a hospital.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. Okay, so tell us then more about what is life on the job like for you? Like, what do you do day to day?
Yeah.
What do you do when you get up in the morning throughout?
Yeah.
Is there a
Well, the
typical
majority
day?
of what I'm doing is one-on-one personal counseling.
Oh,
So
okay.
when I sit down with a client initially, I spend a whole hour with them. And so it's very intensive. I mean, think part of what happened when I was doing my rotation in my internship, and I realized when I was in a hospital setting, I got about 15 minutes with a patient. See, somebody just had a heart attack. They expect you would go in and you would sit down for 15, 20 minutes, talk to them how to eat better, and you may never see that patient again. And I thought, I really want to have more intimacy with patients to really work with them from beginning to end and see the follow through. And that's why I have my own private practice. I get to spend a lot of time with people. So that first consult is very intensive. We sit down at assessment, education, meal planning. They'll follow up in 2 weeks with a detailed journal. We continue the education. And I'm because I've been doing this for about 20 years, I've learned to be a puzzle solver. You could come to me with weight gain, high blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol, GI, autoimmune, and I could counsel all of that together as one package just through my experience.
Wow.
When I started, it was intimidating, but over time you really learn to look at a whole person and really help all of their situation, and that's what's great about what I do day to day. I mean, I get to spend a lot of time with people really making that kind of difference.
That's great. Okay,
Yeah.
so tell me about making a difference. I think that's, when students are trying to decide what they want to do for a career, they're really looking for something where they help people,
Yes.
they make a difference. How do you make a difference?
That's a great point, because I've had my husband, for example, say, Heather, I sell truck parts, right? I'm not helping anybody. And, it's true. But what I do, I get emotionally involved with my clients because I care. I mean, you really definitely have to be an empathetic person. You have to be able to deal with a person who might be I have clients who are physicians, who are doctors, primary care physicians, who still come to me because they're confused about their diabetes or high cholesterol. So you can work with people who are very educated versus people who don't even understand the word calories or what a carbohydrate is. So you have to be very open-minded to be able to work with people from really different educational backgrounds. But the rewarding part is that you can take somebody who may know nothing, teach them just enough to get off all of their medications, blood pressure, diabetic, cholesterol medications, change their lives. I mean, that in itself is so rewarding. I have great patients and bad patients. I've had some patients fire me after one visit because this happened twice because they didn't instantly lose the weight.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally 10 days later would call and say, I haven't lost a pound. I'm going to cancel the follow-up. I'm like, are you sure? Because it's not just about counting calories. I mean, when you become really good at being a dietitian, I mean, you really truly understand the biochemistry. It's about manipulating hormones and blood sugar balance. And some people get it quickly and some people it takes a little bit longer, but it's very rewarding to be able to see people go from so sick to so well, especially if they've had a heart attack or open heart surgery and end up coming out the other end like a whole new person because you teach them how to eat right and encouraging the exercise and the movement. I had a client where she was on, I think, 7 or 8 different allergy and asthma medications, couldn't exercise because she couldn't breathe. She was reacting to food. We took out those food sensitivities. All gone, no more medications, back to running our half marathons. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that really makes you feel good at the end of the day.
That is great.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Really rewarding.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So now all this education that you have to work with all these different people, with all the illnesses and ailments you've mentioned. Did you learn all that in your degree program?
No.
No, education is important.
No, of course
not
it is.
trying to knock it.
No, it isn't. But I have to believe that it's very different today too. I'm talking, this is 20 to 25 years ago of schooling for me. So the reality is I'm sure a lot is advanced because we were taught just basic like food guide pyramid, right? You eat a lot of grains, eat fat sparingly. There's been so much change. That's why it's good that we do continuing education because science now, eggs don't raise cholesterol. That's like the big thing. But we've learned a lot more. And so the reality is we have to, as a dietitian, I need to keep on top of that. But most of my information has been self-read, self-taught. But it's the patients who teach me. When I took that first patient and went for it and said, I want you to eat as many eggs as you want every day, 3 months later we checked their cholesterol and it's dropped tremendously because they're off, say, sugary cereals and bagels and muffins. That's the education. That's the experience. I mean, I didn't learn that in the textbooks 20 years ago. So no, I'm sure there's advanced materials today, but really to be able to do what I do and be able to look at somebody and take it all in, that's just experience. And the best experience is just the thousands of people that I've worked with over the 20 years. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
So you mentioned briefly about, taking insurance back a little bit ago. What are your experiences with that?
Well,
so do you do that as a part of your?
No, I don't. In my private
business?
practice, I'm fee for service. I don't. I considered multiple times contracting with insurance, but so far the reimbursement hasn't been, I think, very fair especially for what we're doing and the impact that we make. It's unfortunate that some of the insurances that are quite common might only reimburse $27 or $17 for a session with me. And because of that, it would be very challenging for me to make a living, considering I have to pay a biller, because that's a whole education in itself to learn health insurances and billing. Not that I couldn't, but I'd rather spend time with my patients. So I do offer that if they have something medically diagnosed like diabetes, I can give them a proper invoice, or they can submit, and they can submit it like I'm an outside provider, out of network provider, and potentially get some reimbursement there.
Oh, wow.
So I do offer that, but I also take health flex spending accounts like HSAs, so they can use that with me. But I do cash, check, credit card. But I give a good value. I don't overcharge. I keep my rates down to make it fair for people, because I discovered some other dietitians are charging almost double what I charge. So I try to keep it fair enough where I can make a living, or people can still afford it to come see me, for sure.
Wow.
Absolutely.
So yeah, all that marketing and business
Yeah.
stuff is always
There's a lot. Yeah, there's
challenging too.
a lot that goes into. I spend a lot of money on software, HIPAA compliant software programs that I use with my clients, marketing, and yeah, there's a lot that goes into having your own business like that.
Right.
So.
Good.
For sure, I couldn't live off of $17 if it's unfortunately for 10 minutes, but
Right.
it'd be nice, but yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Wow. Okay. So do you have any favorite, sources for information that you go to? Like, do you like to read research? Do you have any podcasts? Any of your favorites?
I do my own blogging. I blog twice a week, so I'm always trying to put up interesting facts, recipes, healthy new products that I find for my clients to go to. I send out a monthly newsletter with a nice different topic every month, so they have that from me. But there are a few physicians out there on the internet that do offer, I think, very sound advice. One, Dr. Joseph Mercola and Dr. Axe, who's very up and coming and young and popular, and I like them. They definitely sell a lot of products on their website, so kind of putting that aside, though, knowing what I know, the information that they provide is very sound, based on a lot of chemistry, not fad diets.
Yay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay. So do you recommend your job, and if so, like, to who? Is there like a certain characteristic or personality type that does better, or it's probably...
I have to say, you'd have to be a very open-minded, compassionate, empathetic person. I don't even know if I was that great at it at first, but I definitely learned that skill, and it's transcended into my personal life and even my personal relationships. There's no doubt. There had been days where I'd have 14 clients back to back, and everyone, it's a brand new person with a whole new education background, personality, and if you have to be a very flexible person, you can't go into this field being super regimented. I think you'll get disappointed and your clients will get frustrated. You have to, you really have to be able to adapt and be a little bit of a chameleon from person to person. Because some people need tough love, and other people need a lot of hand-holding, and you have to adapt, for sure.
See, all that motivating and psychology
Yes,
too. Is
I feel
such a
just.
big part of...
I'm a big therapist. Because I'm giving facts and information, but really I'm guiding people through a life change. Because to me, talking about food is as sensitive as religion and politics. For some people, it's a very sensitive topic, and you have to be mindful. There are certain clients who are like, I won't give up that 3 glasses of wine per day, or I won't give up this or that. And you have to be adaptive and say, okay, let's work around that. And that's a perfect case where I had a gentleman who didn't want to stop the alcohol, but we cleaned up his diet well enough that he got well. And so if you're not open-minded to that, if you are, I think certain doctors or dietitians might be so regimented, like you're not allowed to eat red meat. It's not fair to that patient to say, let's work around something. Never ever. Yeah, you've got to be a little flexible. For sure.
Wow. So your job definitely keeps you on your toes.
Yes.
For sure. Lots of challenges, but like you said, the reward is probably just great.
It is for sure.
Okay. Do you have any general life advice for our students? Is there a secret to happiness? What's the meaning of life? Can you answer all those big questions?
Yeah, oh my goodness. I think when it comes to being happy as far as what you're going to do for a living, I love what I do. Like, I could tell, I switched my major 3 times before I decided to do this. I was in business, I kept changing. I wasn't happy. My grades reflected that. And as soon as I started doing the nutrition classes, and I was so interested that I ended up graduating like a 3.98. Like, I was fascinated.
Wow.
I think if you're going to go into something like this, you better love it. You better be excited, because I can't imagine doing this and not liking it. It would stress me out. I think I would be an unhappy person being as intensive. This job is emotionally draining at times. There's no doubt to that. Because I care so much and I'm trying to inspire that if I didn't love what I was doing, I think I wouldn't be as happy. So I would say if you're going to go into any field like this where you're going to spend this much intimate time with somebody, you better make sure that's really what you want to do. But if you do, it's worth it. It's rewarding because it's very emotional. Some days, yeah.
Wow.
You get very emotionally attached to some of your clients for sure.
Okay, that's
Mhm.
great. So you mentioned like volunteering and that sort of thing. So are there any opportunities with you? Like could somebody, or can you make some recommendations as far as like if somebody wants to go into, you know, the nutrition field,
Well,
how could they
your
get some
program
hands-on?
should help with that. Like that's like
Okay.
when I was going through mine and they said, the actual clinic, your courses and the instructors should actually have places for you to volunteer. They usually kind of hook up with like soup kitchens, those type of things, and that way they can log it. It's kind of like an actual volunteer program. If they came to me, I've never been asked to do that before. I did have a gal shadow me once when I was working in a cardiology practice, but I've never done that in my private practice. But typically when you're in school and looking for those opportunities, your advisor should have that information. That's kind of how it went with us.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So maybe, all right, so yeah,
Yeah.
get on with the department chair here and
Yep.
then, okay, ask
Mhm.
them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do that too. Cool. All right. Anything else you wanted to share? Anything that you can think of we didn't cover about your job?
No, just I think the biggest thing is if you're going to go through and be an RD, just remember there's so many different opportunities. It's not just about being in a hospital or a nursing home. I mean, all of that is out there. There's a huge need, don't get me wrong. But if you want to spend more time, if you want just a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, I think it's a wonderful opportunity because you're going to learn a lot like in that type of setting. But if you want to be able to do various opportunities, don't be afraid to try to work for yourself, but be patient. The first 5 years of being a dietitian, I was still working night jobs to support myself until I got my business thriving. Because how I got it thriving was word of mouth. I remember I taught a lecture at a local gym. I was working part-time at a gym, working with the people there, and I was giving a lecture, and somebody who was there came and popped his head in, liked what I had to say. He was a doctor working for a cardiology practice, brought me into the cardiology practice full-time.
Oh, wow.
That's kind of the thing that if you're going to try to really get out there and be an own person, be patient.
Okay.
It takes time. Nobody
Yes.
becomes an instant success if you're going to have a private practice overnight, for sure. But no, the world is open. I mean, I used to lecture for the IRS to keep them, yeah. I used to lecture for the Glendale and Phoenix Fire Department. There was a company in Europe called Tignum. I'd flown over to Europe a few times to give talks. I mean, I've had a diversified experience just because I've kept myself open for opportunities. Like the next 2 days, like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to do counseling for 5 and 6 hours each day for the employees to help with wellness, and corporate wellness. So there really is a huge opportunity and varied experiences out there if you keep your mind open.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow, very exciting. For sure. Gosh. All right. Well, thanks for sharing all that with
Okay,
us,
no
Heather.
problem.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
All
Appreciate
right.
your time.
All right,
So
thank you.
Are you comfortable with me sharing your contact info if they have questions?
Of course, absolutely.
Okay, so I'll
You
put
bet.
that on the video later.
All right, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Heather. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.